13 countries, 6 ongoing geopolitical conflicts, 6 places where World War III can erupt at any moment in the 21st century. Brace yourself for a transcontinental journey across the 7 seas. At the end of this journey, you will have a better understanding of what 21st century world politics is all about, from the origin of each conflict to where it is heading right now. This video is based on Robert D. Kaplan's The Revenge of Geography, Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography, and Henry Kissinger's World Order. I am Pratik. Welcome to Eclectic. If you are someone who wants to understand your past, improve your present, and shape your future, you are at the right place. Welcome and get aboard. Himalayas, India versus China. In the last 20 years, India and China, the two most populous countries with rapidly growing economies, have gone from being two neighbors trying to understand each other to becoming fierce competitors in trade, technology, manufacturing, and global politics. China sees India as a threat to its emerging global economic dominance, while India has been steadily making important moves in the global politics. This increased competition has led to increased military tensions between the two countries along the border. Here are 3 primary reasons behind the Indo-China border conflicts in the Himalayas. Number 1. The geographical protection. The mountain range of the Himalayas plays an important role in protecting a country from any outside invasion. A country that captures the important regions in the Himalayas will gain a significant military advantage over the other. In the last 10 years, India and China have been fiercely carrying out construction projects to upgrade infrastructure to support heavy military presence in the Himalayas. Number 2. The confusion over the actual line of control. Between India and China, there is no mutually agreed line of actual control. India says that LAC is 3,488 kilometers long, while China says it is actually 2,000 kilometers long. This confusion over LAC and the presence of rivers, lakes and the snow caps along the frontier means that the line can shift from region to region, bringing soldiers of two countries to face each other at many points, sparking a confrontation. Number 3. The water of Brahmaputra. The river Brahmaputra and the glaciers that feed India's holy river Ganga originate in China. This gives China a unique advantage over India as it can interfere with the source of water for both of these rivers. China has been building dams and hydropower projects along the Brahmaputra without providing sufficient details of the projects to India. China is 3 times bigger than India in size but has 4 times less fresh water than India. As the water scarcity worsens in both countries, the competition over the shared water resources has become another source of tension. In the last few years, the militaries of the both countries have had several skirmishes along the border. Border tensions between the India and China are mostly about not letting each other gain any geographical advantage along the LAC that could translate into a greater militaristic advantage. Geography is the primary reason here. Whoever captures the most important regions in the Himalayas will ultimately be a winner if a full-scale war ever breaks out between the two. Tim Marshall's quote from the Prisoners of Geography precisely explains this situation. All great nations spend peacetime preparing for the day war breaks out. The Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Israel and Iran. Almost the entire Middle East is at war. Every other Middle Eastern country has been dealing with some sort of armed conflict. But currently Israel, Iran and Saudi Arabia are the 3 countries that are most actively engaged in such conflicts. Historically, the entire Middle East conflict has always been about 2 things: religion and oil. In the 19th and the early 20th century, most of the Arabian Peninsula was controlled by the Ottoman Empire. In World War I, the Ottomans fought alongside Germany and lost the war. The defeat in the World War I and continuous economic decline led to the collapse of the Ottomans in 1920. When it collapsed, several small tribes fought each other to rule the Arabian Peninsula. Out of all the tribes, the tribe called El Saad conquered most of the peninsula and established the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1932. 6 years later, they discovered oil and voila, suddenly became rich. And when you have oil, you get friends like USA. While Saudi Arabia was riding high on its oil money, on the eastern side of the Persian Gulf, another country was emerging: Iran. It had a lot of oil reserves and most importantly, it was a democratic country. I know, it is very hard to believe, but once upon a time, Iran had a democratically elected government and Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh was a beloved leader. But suddenly, the United States decided to ruin it all in 1953 by secretly staging a coup to remove Prime Minister Mossadegh. But why would America do such a thing? America loves democracy, doesn't it? But back then, you know what it loved more than democracy? oil. Today it might have become self-sufficient in producing energy, but back then that wasn't the case, and America poked its nose wherever there was oil. In the first half of the 20th century, the British invaded Iran twice and it controlled Iran's oil for decades. But that changed when Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh decided to nationalize the Iranian oil industry and denied Britain any further involvement. Britain got pissed and asked America, "Hey buddy, would you help us here? We are kind of losing our control of oil industry here." The US was quick to respond. It took 3 decisive steps. Uncle Sam bought off Iranian press to circulate anti-government propaganda, 2 befriended Islamic clergy, and finally when the widespread protests broke out all over the Iran, they overthrew Mossadegh's government and replaced it with their puppet monarch Reza Shah. Yeah, being a dictator is fine as long as you obey America. Reza Shah did what the US and the other Western countries wanted him to do. He started aggressively westernizing Iran. While Iran was undergoing a forced cultural transformation, there emerged another country. Israel declared independence in 1948 and became the world's first Jewish state in 2 millennia. The only problem was its location. It is situated on a piece of land that most Arabs think rightfully belongs to Muslims. Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, is considered a holy place by both Jews and Muslims. For Jews, all creation began in Jerusalem, and for Muslims, it is the place where Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. Even today, more than 80% of the Muslim countries don't recognize Israel as a country. But back then, Reza Shah of Iran thought otherwise. He thought by having friendly relations with Israel, he can have a strategic advantage over other Muslim countries and he can expand Iran's influence throughout the Middle East. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the oil-rich Saudi Arabia, Iran under Reza Shah, and newly established Israel were backed by the United States and had friendly relations with each other until one of them collapsed. Remember the Reza Shah who wanted to westernize Iran and was in bed with the US government? It turned out that the majority of Muslim population in Iran did not like his reforms and the westernization of Iran that he was trying to achieve. People began to realize that the US was behind the coup that overthrew their democratically elected government in 1953. This was the precise moment when the fate of the entire Middle East was about to change. Iran underwent a giant religious revolution. People overthrew Reza Shah and in his place established a religious government headed by Ayatollah Khomeini. The new religious government started off by hitting the West, particularly the US. Iran immediately severed all ties with Israel and joined the long list of Muslim countries that don't recognize Israel. That's how the Israel-Iran rivalry began. While this was happening in the Iran, the rulers of Saudi Arabia got anxious. They thought, "Oh God, this revolution can inspire the people of our country to rise against us." In addition to that, Saudi Arabia is a Sunni Muslim country and Iran is a Shia Muslim country. There began another rivalry in the Middle East. Right now in the 21st century, there is a brutal Cold War going on in the Middle East. Iran's influence is on a rise. It has become friends with Iraq and has growing military presence in Syria, which has become a headache for both Israel and Saudi Arabia. Israel fears that by having a military presence in Syria, Iranian missiles can easily target Israel, and that's why Israel has been constantly targeting Iranian military bases in Syria.
Israeli warplanes fired a number of missiles. They struck the coastal city of Latakia in western Syria.
In response, Iran funds and supports anti-Israel militant groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia always feared that Iran wants to dominate the Middle East and convert the region into a Shia-dominated society. Their fears came to life when a CIA report in 1980 claimed that Iran wants to bring revolution to other Muslim countries, and to do that it is helping Shia minority groups, both civilian and militant, who are trying to overthrow their governments in Iraq, Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia. These proxy wars create unpredictable circumstances that can ultimately lead to a widespread war. Iran and Saudi have ambitions to become dominant powers in the Middle East, while Israel just wants to ensure its safety. In the future, if Iran ever acquires or tries to acquire nuclear weapons, which seems to be its plan, to counter that, Saudi Arabia will try to buy nuclear weapons from Pakistan, and so would Egypt and Turkey, and Israel will keep hammering Iran's nuclear facilities with airstrikes. All of this tension can lead to a disastrous Middle Eastern conflict. If Iran ever attacks Israel, it would be catastrophic. An effectively coordinated strike between Israel, Saudi Arabia and US military forces can cripple the Iranian military and force it to surrender. But thousands, if not millions of lives would be lost. The only reason Western countries hesitate to intervene or strike against Iran is that Iran has the ability to close the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most strategically important choke point. Located between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, it provides the only sea passage from the Persian Gulf to the open sea. 20% of the world's oil passes through it. If Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, the entire world will feel the pain. East Asia. This is China. China is a bad neighbor. It has 17 territorial disputes with its neighbors on land and sea, and if it ever comes to space, they will have a dispute up there too. One such dispute is between China and Taiwan. In the first half of the 20th century, Japan invaded China twice and occupied most of the Chinese heartland. At the end of the World War II, when the US bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan surrendered and withdrew its troops from China. As soon as the Japanese left, the civil war broke out in China between the communists led by Mao Zedong and the nationalist forces under Chiang Kai-shek, both sides wanting to rule China. Communist forces emerged victorious, and nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek along with his 2 million anti-communist supporters fled to Taiwan, this tiny little strategically important island. Since then, China has been trying to integrate Taiwan into its fold, and now China is desperate. But the question is, why is Taiwan so important to China anyway? Two simple reasons. First, location. Taiwan is an island that separates the South China Sea and the East China Sea. If China takes over Taiwan, it would be able to project its power in the Western Pacific region, and in the future could even threaten US military bases located in Guam and Hawaii. The second reason is economics. This tiny island nation has GDP of $600 billion. China is 267 times bigger and has 58 times more population than Taiwan, yet its GDP is just 10 times greater. That means on average, every person in Taiwan is 6 times more productive compared to mainland China. Much of the world's everyday electronic equipment from phones to laptops, watches and gaming consoles are powered by chips made in Taiwan. By one measure, a single Taiwanese semiconductor company, TSMC, has over half of the world's market. If China takes over Taiwan, it gets all of these economic benefits and very unique leverage in the global market.
We don't have the ability to make the most advanced chips right now. But today, 75% of the production takes place in East Asia. 90% of the most advanced chips are made in Taiwan. China is doing everything it can to take over the global market.
In short, Taiwan is one of the most strategically and economically important regions in the world, and that's why China just cannot let it go. But if China is so desperate, why hasn't it been able to take over Taiwan yet, just like it took over Tibet? The answer is a love triangle that exists between China, Taiwan and the US. In 1949, Chinese leader Mao Zedong wanted to invade Taiwan, but suddenly war broke out on the Korean peninsula between communist North Korea and South Korea. To fight off the communist influence in the Pacific, America formed an alliance with Taiwan and forced Chairman Mao to drop his plans to invade Taiwan. From there began the US-Taiwan friendship. 36 years later, in 1986, Taiwan underwent major political reforms and became a democracy, the very system that China hates the most. If that was not enough, the new opposition party of Taiwan called for an independent Taiwan. 10 years later, in 1996, to meddle with the elections, China again tried to use its military might to threaten Taiwan by conducting missile tests near the coast of Taiwan.
To the first free elections of a Chinese leader in 5,000 years.
China announced Friday that it would start the new military exercises less than a week before Taiwan's presidential election.
I think it is a very bad mistake on their part to put the impact area so near to Taiwan. I deplore that decision on their part.
America was again quick to respond with the biggest display of military might in Asia since the Vietnam War.
Diplomatic trouble may be brewing again between China and the United States.
President Bill Clinton sent America's best aircraft and guided missile carriers directly here to Taiwan, and China backed off. But a lot has changed in the last 20 years. China has built a formidable navy, America's global influence is on a decline, and Taiwan has emerged as a full-blown democracy. The young generation of Taiwan is intensely anti-Chinese, so much so that it has become difficult for China even to have deeper economic ties with Taiwan without facing any opposition from young Taiwanese people. This has helped a pro-Taiwan independence candidate in winning the 2016 presidential election.
China! No! Say yes to Taiwan!
We are an independent country. We have the military and we have elections.
All of this has disturbed and pissed off China, and China is flexing again. In the year 2020, China started sending its military aircraft into Taiwan's air defense zone without informing Taiwan. This time also, America came to Taiwan's aid along with Canada with its most advanced weapons and entered the Strait of Taiwan. Only this time, China did not stop. It actually started sending even more Chinese aircraft every day. In the same week, China's state-owned publication published this article. Time to warn Taiwan secessionists and their fomenters. War is real. Taiwan is just 100 miles away from China while the US is 6,400 miles away. If China invades Taiwan, all Taiwan can do is try and slow down the Chinese attack while waiting for outside help. Even if America arrives on time, we have to keep in mind that both the US and China have nuclear weapons. That is the scenario everyone should avoid. Once you start a conflict, you don't get to control its outcome. It can lead countries into self-destruction, and thanks to Einstein, with those nuclear bombs, the entire world can go down with them. Despite having great military and strategic advantages, the only thing that is stopping China from invading Taiwan is that unlike Russia, China's economy is fully integrated into global trade. It won't be able to handle economic sanctions. European countries are dependent on Russian energy, and that's why they hesitate to act against Russia. But in China's case, if people stop buying Chinese stuff, its economy will collapse, leading to political instability in China. On the other hand, if it engages in armed conflict with the US here, back here in the Himalayas, there is a risk that India might just take this opportunity to capture important regions. And up here, the Tibetan independence fighter would very much like to do something about taking back the control of Tibet. South Caucasus, between Europe and Asia. Armenia and Azerbaijan are two countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. Ethnic Armenians lived in Armenia while Azeris lived in Azerbaijan, except for this mountainous region called Nagorno-Karabakh, where historically the majority of the population has been Armenian, yet under the Soviet Union it was officially a semi-autonomous territory of Azerbaijan. Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh always wanted to join the Armenian Republic, but as long as the Soviet Union was strong, no one could do anything about it. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, both countries declared independence, and that's when things got complicated. Soon violence erupted between the two countries over the disputed region. Around 20,000 people died and over 1 million people were forced to flee their homes. Armenia won the war and occupied several pieces of Azerbaijan, including the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Armenia was quick to rename and repopulate all the newly conquered regions with ethnic Armenians. The peace deal was brokered by Russia, having good relations with both countries, but this Armenian occupation displaced thousands of Azeris, and since then Azerbaijan has been quietly planning revenge. It upgraded its military by spending 6 times more money than Armenia and has found a new powerful ally, Turkey, a NATO member. Populations of both countries are ethnically Turkic, and their governments have been helping each other on many levels, from joint military exercises to Turkey selling advanced weapons to Azerbaijan. With Turkey's support and 25 years of preparation, Azerbaijan attacked Armenia on 27 September 2020. Only this time, it was not just about regaining control of Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan also wanted to capture this corridor that can link Azerbaijan to its ally Turkey. After fighting the war for 44 days, Armenia surrendered. Azerbaijan regained control of 5 cities and 286 villages, and the good old friend Russia turned up with another deal that significantly reshaped the geopolitics of the region. According to it, Azerbaijan will keep what it conquered and take over this part from Armenia. Most of the Nagorno-Karabakh region will remain under the control of ethnic Armenians, but 2,000 Russian troops will be stationed there as peacekeepers. Down here, Turkey and Azerbaijan will be able to build a road that will give both countries direct access to each other via land. And guess what? Even Turkey got to send a peacekeeping force to Nagorno-Karabakh. So while Russia and Turkey gained strategic advantages, Azerbaijan won new territories, Armenia is left in disgrace. A lot of Armenians had to flee their homes just the way once Azeris had to. In the Armenian capital, people stormed government buildings calling for the removal of the prime minister. This conflict is far from resolved yet. The new agreement made things even more hostile because now this region of the world has armies of 4 different countries, each trying to assert its dominance. To make matters more complicated, Turkey is a NATO member. Remember, the attack against one means attack against all? The mention of Turkey brings us to the shores of the Mediterranean, where the tensions between Turkey and Greece are on the rise. Historically, Turkey and Greece have fiercely opposed each other on the Cyprus issue. The Republic of Cyprus is an island country in the eastern Mediterranean. From 1878 to 1960, Cyprus was under British rule. For much of its history, Greeks and Turkish Cypriots lived together on the island. In 1960, when Cyprus gained independence from Britishers, communal riots broke out throughout the island between Greeks and Turkish Cypriots. Just like the communal riots that took place between Hindus and Muslims when Britishers left India. Guys, do you see a pattern here? British colonizers have a history of leaving behind a communal mess wherever they ruled. It seems the British game of divide and rule has ruined a lot of countries around the world. Anyway, I digress. Back to Cyprus. Two countries wanted to take advantage of Cyprus's communal crisis. First, the Greek army launched a coup to overthrow the existing president of Cyprus and replaced him with a new one so that Greece can assert more influence on the island. In response, 5 days later, Turkey invaded the island under the pretext of protecting the Turkish Cypriots and gained control of 1/3 of the island. Greeks had to flee from northern Cyprus, while Turkish Cypriots from all over Cyprus migrated to the northern part for protection. Greece backed off when Turkey threatened to declare all-out war, but Turkey itself never left the island and instead installed a new government for northern Cyprus called the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Since then, this tiny island country is divided into two parts. For the rest of the world, there is only one Republic of Cyprus, but on the ground, the country is governed by two different governments. Only Turkey recognizes Northern Cyprus as a country and intends to keep it that way. It sends Turkish nationals to settle on the island and is trying hard to make Northern Cyprus economically and socially dependent on Turkey. Northern Cyprus depends on Turkey for drinking water. 2/3 of its budget is funded by Turkey. Turkey has renamed all the villages from Greek names to Turkish names, and it maintains a military of 30,000 troops on the island. But the question is, why? Why is it so important for Turkey to maintain control over this island? Two reasons: geopolitics and economics. Firstly, it gets to build a naval base on the coast of northern Cyprus and gets to control its trading port. Secondly, Turkey gets to exploit the natural resources of the Mediterranean. It is estimated that around 2 billion barrels of oil and 4 trillion cubic meters of natural gas deposits lie in the seabed of the eastern Mediterranean. Now that is something countries can start a war over. While Turkey treats northern Cyprus as a country and tries to assert its dominance in the eastern Mediterranean, the rest of the world sees it an illegal occupation of Cyprus by Turkey. Apart from the decade-old Cyprus conflict, Greece and Turkey have disagreements over the exploration rights in the Mediterranean, and on 2 occasions both have almost gone to war over it.
Well, Turkey has kicked off its first deep-sea gas drilling operation in the Mediterranean.
On July 21, 2020, Turkey announced that its drilling ship would be exploring a disputed part of the sea for oil and gas. Greece responded by placing its Air Force, Navy and Coast Guard on high alert. As if the historic issue of Cyprus was not enough, Greece and Turkey now have found another reason to fight over: the natural resources of the Mediterranean. Both countries are NATO member. This conflict could see an unforeseen clash between the two NATO countries. Up here, there exists another geographical conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I have made a separate video on that, which reveals how energy is the reason behind Putin's attack on Ukraine. From our point of view, going to war and killing thousands of people over territorial or religious disputes seems an absurd idea. But that's not how egotistical world leaders think. They can go to war over any small issue that can make them look weak. Oftentimes, common people don't want war. The leaders do. They drag along common people with them. Historically, some leaders have displayed the tendency to overestimate their powers, just as Hitler overestimated his power when he attacked Soviet Russia, Napoleon in the 19th century Russia, Soviet Russia in Afghanistan, and the United States in Vietnam. No matter which country wins the war, common people always lose. That is why if you are living in a democratic country, be sure to elect a good down-to-earth leader, not some egomaniac. And if you are living in a country where you don't have a right to vote, may the Lord have mercy on you. If you find my content useful, drop a like to let that goddamn algorithm know that my content is worth promoting across YouTube. That's enough for today. See you in the next video, guys.